Beyond the Devil.
Some say it's cursed, some say it's haunted, but it is safe to say that a seriously unlucky amount of negative events have happened since it has been opened. The Cecil Hotel opened in 1924, located in Los Angeles. It is a large hotel even for LA. It has 700 rooms. It is not a luxury hotel, it is more of a traveler's hotel. It is also very close to a train station. Outside the hotel is Skid Row, where there is a lot of homeless people, sleeping on the streets with lots of tents and rubbish around. It is a very dangerous place. If you visit the hotel and don't notice where you are located, you'll be visiting one of the most violent parts of America and one of the poorest areas in the world, with an extreme population of homeless. There are homeless services that are located there, and it is one of the only places to go if you are struggling and want assistance. Ex-prisoners and the like will be dropped off at Skid Row. It has a huge drug problem and a huge population of people with mental health issues. This is one of the reasons people were so worried for the victim in this case, because it's possible she went out at night by herself as a naive tourist and possibly got kidnapped or murdered. The Cecil is a kind of long-term living place for people who can't rent for whatever reason, and is inhabited by all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, criminal or otherwise. Police said that they had 1 to 3 calls a day at the Cecil for different issues during the time of the victim's disappearance and for years before it. It has been nicknamed the suicide by local residents due to several events since its opening. Some examples given in the Netflix documentary are: in 1931, W.K. Norton committed suicide. In 1962, Pauline Otten jumped out the window in a fight with her husband. She landed on a man walking down the street and it killed them both. In 1964, Goldie Osgood, who lived in the Cecil, someone attacked her in a room in the middle of the day. She was assaulted and murdered. In 1985, on the 14th floor, there was a serial killer called the Night Stalker who lived in the hotel. He killed 14 people of any age or gender anywhere. This is far from an exhaustive list. In 2011, 2 years before the events we are discussing, they opened up as the Stay on Main. This made it 2 separate hotels in one building. Stay on Main for the travelers and the Cecil for the tenants. It has 15 stories without a 13th floor. Elisa Lam loved writing Tumblr posts. She wrote it like a diary but for other people to actually read, and it was cheaper than a therapist. In mid-2010, Elisa began a blog named Ether Fields on Blogspot. Over the next 2 years, she posted pictures of fashionable clothing and accounts of her life, particularly her struggle with mental illness. In January 2012, Elisa posted that she had a relapse at the start of the current school term, which had forced her to drop several classes, leaving her feeling so utterly directionless and lost. She titled her post, "You're Always Haunted by the Idea You're Wasting Your Life," after a quotation from novelist Chuck Palahniuk. She used that quote as an epigraph for her blog. A little over 2 years after she had started blogging, she announced she would be abandoning her blog for another she had started on Tumblr. Its content mostly consisted of fashion photos, quotes, and a few posts in her own words. After feeling down for a long time from her mental health, she decided she wanted to go traveling and see the world by herself, for a bit of a change and to help her mental health. Her parents were comfortable with it as she was 21, and as long as they were being called every night. When Elisa Lam looked for a place on the internet to stay, she saw the Stay on Main and probably thought it was a nice, safe place to stay. For her trip to California, Lam traveled alone on Amtrak and intercity buses. She visited the San Diego Zoo and posted photos taken there on social media. On January 26th, she arrived in Los Angeles. After 2 days, she checked into the Cecil Hotel near downtown Skid Row. Elisa Lam came to Los Angeles on the 28th of January 2013. By January the 31st, it was the last time her family was in contact with her. Her family told the police it was routine for her to check in every day, and she hadn't, so they were concerned. Police were told by the family that she was staying at the Cecil Hotel. It wasn't long before 20 detectives came to the hotel looking for witnesses and clues. She was supposed to check out on February the 1st, which was the same day as she was reported missing. Police went to her room but found that hotel staff had removed all of her property. It was protocol to take belongings and store them for 30 days to be collected. Her laptop was left, her prescription medications and her wallet and clothes were also there. The employees said the room was messy when he took her items, no drug paraphernalia and no evidence of forced entry. A detective on the case had a hunch for some reason it was not going to end well. They had no leads, so they needed to speak to as many people as possible to find some information. Hotel employees that had seen her said she had always had a book in her hands and was frequently seen reading, so they were aware of who she was. Investigators spoke to late shift employees that night and said they had seen her in an area no guests were allowed in. They had asked her to leave, and that's the last time anyone had seen her. They found out that Elisa was one of 2 daughters of an immigrant family from Hong Kong. Her parents owned a Chinese restaurant and that she loved Tumblr and used it as a kind of online diary. Police used this to find out more information about her. They found that she was open to meeting and hanging out with strangers. Police suspected maybe she met someone online in real life. Could she have met a gruesome end, not knowing how dangerous the area here is? She visited a bookstore called The Last Bookstore. Detectives went there and talked to the manager. She recognized Elisa had been to the store. She said Elisa was friendly and lively and had no real more information for them. After being there, Elisa went back to the hotel and seemingly just vanished later that day. Back at the hotel, the police got the hotel footage and found that not all floors had cameras. There were no cameras on Elisa's floor. They were either not the best quality or facing the correct places you wanted to see. They had hundreds of hours to watch through, which they did minute by minute. 2 detectives watched 20 hours a day focusing on the night of her disappearance. Finally, all of a sudden, they saw her on a camera, which is the footage that was released to the public of her in the elevator. They got excited as they finally had some form of evidence of her whereabouts. However, they then noticed her behavior was very unusual. They plotted out where she could have possibly gone and checked if she was with anyone. They never saw her leave on any of the cameras and on any of the entrances or exits that day, so they informed everyone that she had never left the building. So where did she go? She must still be in the hotel, unless, of course, they are missing something. Detectives had to search the entire hotel. They had to try and locate her as soon as possible, as it had been a while that she had been missing. She had to be in there somewhere. Approximately 14 investigators did an intense search of the hotel. It's a very large place and a lot of work, going from room to room and everything in between. They looked in the basement, toilets, every room, asking lots of questions to the manager as they went. They looked in every closet on every floor, every place that you could think of. They brought in scent dogs to try and pick up her scent. They were led through by the dog, and eventually the dog was able to locate the scent from her room. On the 5th floor, the dog went westbound towards a big window to where there was a fire escape. That is where the dog lost the scent. At this point, all officers were working on overtime. They called in LAPD helicopters to illuminate the entire hotel roof, but didn't find anything. Around 10 p.m. at night, they decided the following day they would regroup. However, there was a cop killer near the area. Christopher Dorner, a former LAPD officer, was attacking police officers, so a lot of the investigators had to leave the case, leaving only a few to remain on the Lam case, as an active shooter was deemed a higher priority. They had around 18 detectives cut down to 4. They were so stumped after not finding anything. The last footage of her was in the elevator. Her parents and sister had come to LA to help search for her. LAPD then held a press conference with the family to try and get help from the public.
Missing persons case, Elisa Lam. She was last seen on the 31st at the Cecil Hotel at 640 South Main Street. She's a Canadian citizen, and the reason that we're investigating this robbery homicide is because we're in connection with Interpol on a regular basis, and any case that involves foreign nationals usually comes to us. So right now we're asking your help. We have a photo. Parents are here. They've flown down from Vancouver. And we're seeking to get this photo out so we can find Elisa. Again, she's been missing since the 31st. And she was down in Los Angeles in our area just basically for leisure, for travel. And we're continuing the investigation now, and we're looking for your help. So with that, that's pretty much all I have as far as details on the case. If you have any questions, I can entertain them now.
got us here said that she vanished under somewhat suspicious circumstances. So what can you say about that?
She was in contact with her parents daily, her family, up until the 31st. So it's been 5 days, 6 days now. And as far as suspicious circumstances, nothing other than that, but there's been no communication at all. And that's worried us and worried the family, so we're proceeding with the investigation on it.
The family did not speak at the conference. Still no sign of communication of or from Elisa. The police said they were collecting footage to examine. The original version of the footage comes out on the LAPD's website. The video released went viral, getting millions of views. YouTube videos popping up everywhere, and the LAPD had no idea what they had unleashed. It gained huge interest online, with people obsessed with the case and wondering where on earth this girl must be. Guests that stayed there when she was missing said the water came out discolored and weird. They still brushed their teeth, showered and drank it, saying it had a funny taste. The pressure was also very low. They got move rooms and the water was the same, so the hotel staff said they would ask maintenance guys to go get it looked at. The manager asked maintenance to check for clogs or issues. The maintenance worker, Santiago Lopez, said he will figure it out. He knew the roof had 4 tanks on top. He thought maybe one was blocked or had run out of water. He went to have a look. There is a ladder on the roof to get to the tanks. On top, there is a little hatch. He had a look in and saw Elisa floating on top of the water, facing up at him, clearly dead and naked. She was pale like a ghost. He knew immediately who she was. He walked into the manager and said Elisa Lam is in the water tank. The manager was gobsmacked. She said, how is it possible that she has been in there for 19 days? Before calling the police, she called her mother to tell her something bad had happened. Gonna stop at that point and ask you a question. Don't you think it's a bit strange that after the manager found out that Elisa Lam's in the water tank, the first thing she did is ring her mom, not the police?
Yeah, I don't even know how she was in contact with Elisa Lam's mom at that point.
Not Elisa's mom, she rang her own mom. The manager rang her own mom to tell her something bad is about to happen before ringing the police to say I found Elisa in the tank.
I thought you meant...
No, she rang her mom.
Was Elisa Lam's mom in Hong Kong or...?
No, she came. She was there, yeah.
So she rang her own mom?
She rang her own mom, yeah. To me, that's a bit like the first thing you do is immediately ring the police, isn't it?
It's not suspicious.
I'm not saying that she did anything wrong. Now, no way am I saying that she had anything to do with this. I'm not. What I'm saying is she's just a strange person. And she comes off as very strange in the documentary. Like, she's a very unemotional, you made me look like a bad manager kind of vibe. The manager said that when they arrived, there had to be at least 100 people on the roof. Investigators said when officers arrived on the scene, the tank hatch was closed. Elisa was floating face up and decomposing considerably. Her clothes were at the bottom of the tank. The whole scene seemed very suspicious. This is not a common occurrence, but the people who were staying there asked the hotel what was going on, but the staff would not tell them. They had to find out from reporters that flocked around the hotel. Guests said it made them feel sick, and one lady said she is sure it traumatized her for life, knowing she had drank that water. The manager told her staff that they are not allowed to comment to the media. They quickly shut down the hotel and had to reassign guests to other hotels. Lots of people complained about being disgusted about the situation to the manager. And in the documentary, the manager says, well, how did they think I felt? I'm disgusted. It's like, if you're staying at a hotel and you've been drinking dead body water, of course you're going to complain to the manager, aren't you? At the end of the day, like, it's going to go, oh, it's okay. 4-star problem. The police were thinking, how and when did she end up in the tank? They checked the roof and were confident she wasn't there. They never said that they checked the tanks. This way, if you know from checking the footage, and the camera never lies, that she didn't leave the hotel, this is what they're telling me. So these two guys can confirm 100% that she never left the hotel. Why would you not check the tanks? So you've checked everywhere, every room, everything on the roof. The only thing there that she could fit in and could be in, the water tank, you decide not to check.
Yeah.
I mean, that is literally what happened.
Sounds like regular.
It doesn't make sense. How can you can't say that. You say I've checked 99% of the building. Well, why don't you check the other 1%? Literally, they pretty much, it is the old joke of it's the last place you look.
Yeah.
It would have been the last place you look. Investigators drained the tank and let her body float down to the floor, and then cut a hole in the side of the tank to remove her body. They had to fingerprint everywhere that could have been touched, but nothing was revealed to point towards a suspect. There was nothing to support a crime of violence had occurred, no physical evidence found. The case was extremely unusual to even the police, who have seen many terrible events. Police went back and watched the video again, checking for other footage of her. At one point she came in and was with 2 men. She was handed a box. She then continues back into the hotel with the box and the 2 men leave. Police were interested in who these men were and what this box was. The box was in the hotel in her lost property, and when opened, the items inside led them to the last bookstore. At the store, the staff said she couldn't carry the book she wanted, so these men delivered it for her. They checked to see if these men ever came back on the cameras, but they did not, so they were ruled out. due to variables in temperatures and other factors. They wanted to check if she had been killed in another location. The examiner looked for signs of injuries. He didn't identify any wounds, fractures, or anything. No foreign biological matter found anywhere on her body. No external or internal injuries. No biological matter found under her fingernails. However, they didn't find anything to suggest she had drowned inside her body either, but he states the absence of these things didn't mean she didn't drown, just that it wasn't 100% confirmed from the evidence. Toxicology was sent off to see if any drugs were in her system, but that takes weeks. She said she didn't party, do drugs, or drink alcohol on a tumbler. But was it possible for a 21-year-old girl in Los Angeles, in Skid Row, a big drug trade area, that maybe she experimented? Was she on a drug creating hallucinations? There was no evidence of that. She did have a history of depression and bipolar disorder. Did she take a large number of pills to try and herself? The only drugs identified were her prescription medication for her bipolar disorder. However, the levels of them were very low, which is interesting. When looking at the description of the medications that were found at the scene in her bottles, there was a higher amount in there than there should have been. When they looked at the toxicology results and pills found at the scene, it suggests she was undertaking the medication. Detectives went back on the roof to get a picture of what it was like for her, to try and get into her headspace. They said that when they retraced her steps, the best they could do to get to the tank itself, you would have to walk on pipes and squeeze in between the tanks to get to the one she was in. So how would you do that while holding a body up ladders? She could have been brought there from an adjacent structure. Again, it would be very difficult to get her there, especially without damaging the body along the way and leaving some form of bruising and scratches. Most dead bodies in water float face down, with the arms down. However, Elisa was the other way around, but because of the water fluctuating around the tank, it could have moved her into that position. The results are released. It was classed as an accident due to drowning, with bipolar disorder being a factor. However, people were not happy with this ruling, with the big factor being the lid being closed when the police arrived. The autopsy report, manner of death, accidental and undetermined were both ticked, but it was crossed out and changed on the form to accidental, with what looked like a 3-day change in the date between these two, with error written under it. This brought on more speculation. Were they trying to silence it for something to hide? No one could seem to request the police report for this, despite it meant to be publicly available. Why will they not release the report? Maybe an easy way out to try and close the case so as to not look incompetent? Is there some kind of cover-up between the hotel and the police? On September 19, 2013, Elisa's parents filed suit against the Cecil Hotel. They believed this was an accidental drowning. They filed for negligence and wrongful death. The Lamb's attorney said there was risk on the roof. They should have done more to keep the public safe, but the hotel's legal counsel said they did take precautions. It was alarmed and an employee-only area, but the fire escapes are accessible to anyone due to fire safety. They should have locked the lids, but there was no regulations to do so at that point. The Lamb's attorney said the hotel has the responsibility, and the hotel should have done more to help protect her, especially when they saw her behaving and how she was acting. The manager said, "Where do you draw the line with something like this?" And if she had called the police, they probably would have not answered or came, due to it being an active area. She says it's not because of the hotel. We were not responsible for her death. The judge ruled in favor of the hotel, and the wrongful death case was dismissed.
Obviously, sounds very cut and dry, doesn't it? Yeah, like, when you read it like that, it sounds... This is, like, the proper story told by the investigators and the police and stuff like that after, you know, what, it's nearly been 10 years now since it happened. I remember around the time this actually came out, and as we'll go into in a moment with these theories and things, obviously, this case will probably never go away. It's one of them things that people are always gonna say could have been so many different things, and I honestly understand when you go through this how people can say that it's a conspiracy or something weird happened, because it is an irregular case. If it was explained like I just explained it, would have been no issue. Case closed. She drowned, didn't take the correct medication. But when we look deeper into it, there's a lot of strange coincidences and a lot of things that don't really line up.
Amy Price, former Cecil Hotel manager at the time. She was manager from 2007 to 2017. She saw the hotel as her kingdom. She said you never knew what was going to happen there. She cooperated with the police. She just said she did the interview to show the world that the manager wasn't an uncaring person or some monster that didn't care about all the issues there. Around the time that she worked there was 80 deaths in 10 years, according to the manager. Some girls Elisa was with complained about erratic and odd behavior, leaving notes on other guests' beds. She was writing "go away, go home, get out." When other guests were trying to access the room, she wouldn't open the door, asking for a password. They relocated her to her own room. Later, she went down to the lobby and she did a gesture saying, "I'm crazy, but so is LA." The manager didn't think this was of concern, as this was normal in LA. There seems to be a lot of guilt and explaining from the hotel manager, in my opinion, and I feel that there is some truth to this.
As her family also said, she used to write notes and leave them around. Now, Elisa originally was staying in a shared hotel room, which to me sounds absolutely boring. But apparently it's a thing, you can get a cheaper room if you share a community room. But the girls in there complained that her behaviour was kind of frightening, like I said. Obviously there's no evidence of what's happening because this is only from what the manager says, but I have no reason to disbelieve her about this because it seems to fit Elisa's character around that time.
The story from the police is that the lid is closed when they found it, which meant to anyone investigating this from home, someone must have done it. Santiago Lopez, the maintenance worker, however, found it open and closed it when he went to tell the manager. Somewhere along the way, it got reported to the media incorrectly. I think the media and police giving misinformation about the tank being closed, mixed in with the hotel video, made this case go viral. The mistake opens up a big list of potential things that could have happened to Elisa.
So if you remember around the time this came out, and this makes complete logical sense to me as well, the media reported that basically somehow Elisa had got onto the roof somehow and then was in a tank with a closed lid. Because of the position she was in the tank, once she got in, she was in water where she couldn't touch the ground, but she also couldn't reach out. So she was stuck in a constant paddling motion to stay alive, right? So once she got in the tank, there was no way of getting out above her. And if she was to stop swimming, she would have drowned. So she was stuck in a constant form of motion to stay alive. So if the tank lid was closed, how would she have closed it?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So if she got in the tank, how would she have closed the lid? So immediately, if that's the information you're going off, say you were even a detective at the time, somebody else has to be involved, don't they?
Yeah.
Like, who shut the lid? Somebody has shut the lid on her. So clearly this is some kind of case of murder. Makes complete logical sense to me, or at least you have to look into it more, because who would go over there, see her in the tank, and shut the lid and sit by? Yeah, okay. So to me, that makes completely logical sense. Also, when it first came out, it was reported that there was no way in a million years she could get onto the roof because she would have to leave through a fire alarm door. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
So essentially, if she was to get on the roof, the alarm would have gone off and it would have triggered. Obviously then, if that was the case, there's no way of getting onto the roof except through this door. The only people who can turn this door off are hotel workers. So obviously someone at the hotel had something to do with it. Makes perfect sense to me. Can't get through the door. They're telling me there's no way she can. No way she can without the alarm going off. So she would have to have somebody take her up there or convince her to go up there, turn the alarm for the door off, put her in the tank, shut the lid. Obviously someone's involved. It's worth noting that the water tanks are approximately 10 foot high, 6 foot in diameter. The lid weighs 20 pounds and it has no hinge on it. It's just a piece of square metal to lift off of a lip. So you can literally take it off and take it with you if you want to. You just put it over the top. So if you put them two things together, there's no way of getting onto the roof. It's like a Mission Impossible with laser grids everywhere. You know, she can't get past the lasers to get on the roof and all that. There's no way she can do that. She had to get into the tank with somebody involved. So straight away you can see why people are like, oh no, that's ridiculous that she drowned by accident. It's obviously a cover-up. What do you think?
The first exposure I had to this, like a lot of strange things, was on 4chan's Paranormal board. Right when it happened, maybe the day or the day after that it happened, and they had the CCTV footage. Obviously, on a board called Paranormal, people were focusing on her strange hand movements in the elevator, which we'll get to later, and it was all about that. I thought it was kind of silly at the time.
The question I'd ask you really is, with that information we just went through, if that's the information that you got, would you believe something more had happened?
Oh yeah,
You just drowned.
Yeah, because people focus on the elevator thing and then cut here.
The two together make a big thing, don't they?
Yeah, the deal with that was that it was heavily romanticized by the paranormal board, and then the mainstream media picking the story up as well, and it ended up in this case of what we now call telephone, because calling it Chinese whispers is racist apparently, where all these facts and things were getting mixed together, and like you do with any media story, and it became, instead of this quite simple story that it was when you write it down on paper, something that was a lot more mysterious. It was basically like a Sherlock Holmes locked room mystery. How does somebody go from this on the elevator to going through a locked door with an alarm into a locked container with a lid, and then the lid gets put back on? It's a murder mystery with a locked room component, which is something that's been in a lot of detective fiction, a lot of mystery fiction.
It's literally something that I imagine would come in one of these games that you buy as well, solve the case.
Yeah, it is.
Like one of them kind of
something like that.
puzzle.
And when you actually looked at the facts, it wasn't like that in reality, because somebody would have to be involved. If these doors were locked and they had alarms, well, obviously it's part of the hotel staff, isn't it? But then that's too obvious, because if there was an alarm and a hotel staff member had to disarm it, then that just immediately points to them. They're the only ones that can do it.
You'd have to be pretty stupid to...
Yeah, somebody would have to put the lid back on, but then why would you dispose of a body in that way? You wouldn't. It's just too risky to do. Wasn't even this in the middle of the day that she went missing as well?
I believe so, yeah.
Carrying a body,
yeah,
staircase in a hotel. How are you going to get away with that? And this is what happened, is that the story became this convoluted mess of different facts that weren't true floating around everywhere, and people coming up with their own interpretations about something. And initially I was interested in the story because it was a fairly interesting story, but the more that you look at the facts of the case, it does seem to be a young woman having a mental health episode, unfortunately, in some kind of, fugue. In some kind of fugue state. She ends up walking onto the roof and drowning. And that's really, in my opinion, that's really all there is to it. I don't think there's a lot else, aside from all of these coincidences and stuff, and that's another thing that makes this quite an interesting thing to talk about. Because, like you said, nobody's ever going to let this one go. It's a kind of moon landing situation. It doesn't matter how much proof you have one or the other way, people are always going to talk about this, because nobody really knows the facts, and the facts are very obscured by a lot of the things that went on.
In any other circumstance, with this amount of coincidental nature, I've heard investigators before say there's no such thing as coincidences, which I don't believe at all, because I know many strange coincidences that have happened, not only to me, but to other people as well. Ridiculous things. But when you're looking at what could be homicide, coincidences are usually very suspicious. And any other case that had this amount of suspicious things, I would be straight on board with yeah, there's something dodgy here. Any other thing, I would be like that. But I don't feel like that. There are a lot of things in this case that are unexplainable. And there are a lot of really stupid things as well, and strange theories. But what you have to remember with this case is, with how it literally went viral, you've got everybody spreading, like you just said, misinformation everywhere, coming up with their own theories and coming up with them as fact.
Yeah,
it's not a case of, this is my theory, it's a case of, this is the fact. I know this girl and she definitely is a ghost or whatever, It's just, like, this is what you get from the internet. And sometimes, including on Reddit, they've actually helped solve crimes before. But most of the time, it usually just makes things more convoluted than it needs to be. We can look this up if you want, but I think it's pretty much explanatory without me having to show it to you. They mention this on the documentary as well, but there's a short period of time at the end of the footage where she's in the elevator and you can kind of see like another person's foot. You know how she's like looking around and it looks like she's hiding from someone or maybe playing a game? Well, right at the end, as she walks off the screen and you never see her again, another foot appears in the footage behind her, like facing the other way. They mention this in the documentary on Netflix, but they never ever go into any explanation of this. Now, I've shown this to multiple people while I've been in my house and researching this case, and they've all said that, yeah, it's very abnormal, very strange. But honestly, I think it's her foot. When you see it at a distance, when you see her on the camera at a distance, it looks like she's wearing shoes. But when she gets closer to the camera, she's wearing like sandals where you can actually see her feet. This looks like a shoe, but she's at the distance where her feet do look like they're wearing shoes, and it's facing the opposite way. So she walks off the camera and then her foot's facing that way, the other foot. Now, if she wasn't acting the way she was, I'd be like, yeah, that's somebody else, because who does that? Who walks, turns the foot backwards? Yeah. But because of the way that she is at that point, like you said, maybe in a fugue state even, where she's doing strange gestures and movements with her hands and feet, I actually think that it is just her foot going backwards. Like, there's nothing else it can be. And it even looks like her feet look at that point. Now, to double check, I went through her autopsy record and found out that she was wearing sandals, like shoes, you know, where you could see her toes and everything. So yeah, it does look like her foot. So a lot of people suggested suicide, generally due to a lot of her Tumblr posts being very negative or down a lot of the time. She had occasional suicides, but there was no evidence that she was actively seeking on doing that, and she'd made a lot of comments about how she was taking medication and stuff for it. You know, people that are planning to do it don't generally try and fix it. It's also very strange for her to commit suicide when she's like, right, I'm going to go actually do something with my life. I'm going to go see the world. I'm 21. Why would you do it halfway through a holiday? Wouldn't it be something you did when you got back? Yeah. Like, oh, I'm depressed now. My life's crap. I mean, it's easy to say that is logical, which you know what I mean? Yeah. Isn't logical. But there is always usually like a thing to it, you know. Two ways that people don't really want to do that is drowning and burning themselves to death. Like, wouldn't you just jump off the building?
It seems like the easiest solution.
There's no going back. There's no panic like, oh, I can stay afloat. There's no, I'm going to change my mind now because drowning's painful. You're just gone if you jump off a building. There's no turning back. And I know, like I said again, it's not logical, but I think in that, if you're telling me that she wasn't having a fugue state, it makes no logical sense. The fact that she did drown, to me, says that there was no logicality to it.
Well, I think one way to look at it, it might sound harsh, but there's the possibility, and I know I'm literally contradicting myself here, but she may have not even been in a fugue state, and it could have entirely been attention-seeking behaviour. If what the hotel manager says is true, which I have no reason to believe that it isn't, and what the other guests say is true, no reason to believe that it's not. She was leaving these notes and things saying get out, and then she went to the hotel manager and said, I'm crazy. That seems very much like attention-seeking behaviour to me.
We know somebody who's very like that. We know somebody with that exact characteristic.
It does make me think of that, yeah. I mean, here's the thing about being crazy is that it's, pretending to be crazy is that it's catch-22, because you actually do have to be crazy to pretend.
Yeah, that's what I've always said.
Yeah, so
like somebody who does this kind of stuff is clearly not mentally well anyway. Yeah.
It's like, you don't take somebody who's and go, well, you didn't put your wrists, so it's obviously just attention-seeking. That's still
or you didn't yourself, so you're obviously not suicidal.
You know, just because she was acting out in this way, it's entirely plausible to me that she could have done this in an attention-seeking way, and she didn't think that jumping in the water tank would be lethal. She thought somebody might come and help her, especially if she's not in the right frame of mind.
Possible, yeah.
So she could jump in there and she'd be thinking like, now I'm getting the attention that I want. Somebody will eventually come and hear me screaming or banging on the wall.
Or maybe there's a way for me to get out.
Or there's a way for me to get out. Somebody will notice, but they just didn't. And that's plausible to me.
It's a possibility.
People might disagree. I don't know.
You can't just say that everyone who's got mental health is just out for attention. That's not what you're trying to get, because I know that's what people would jump straight on is, oh, how dare you say doing this is for attention. But like you said, somebody who does do that kind of thing for attention is actually mentally unwell.
I'm not saying it bad way.
You're not saying like, oh, you just want like parents do to their teenage kids. Oh, you just want attention.
Oh, it just wants attention.
Yeah, you know, it's not like that. Oh, you just want attention. Because I've been in states where I've been incredibly mentally crazy. And when people tell you, oh, it's just in your head, or you're just making it up, or just don't think like that, it doesn't work like that. I've also put, it's believed she undressed in there either to help stay afloat so as to not drown, Or hypothermia making her do it, which is a known thing to happen.
That was my thought immediately, that it would be hypothermia. What time of year was this? Was it
2013, February, so cold.
February? Cold.
Well, it's cold here in February. LA, I
LA,
imagine, is the same.
Pretty sure. It might be a bit colder.
Yeah.
Maybe she could have taken the clothes off to try and form some kind of ladder, like a rope thing to get up, but they would have been tied together, so...
Again, why would she remove her clothes if she wanted to drown?
Yeah.
Surely you'd want the extra weight.
Yeah, why would you care?
You know what I mean?
Elisa stayed on floor 5. When she presses 14, it lights up but goes out immediately, meaning she is on the 14th floor, one floor below the roof. She exits the elevator to the left, heading down the hall. It's very close to a window that leads out to the fire escape, which goes straight to the roof. It's very possible one of these could have been open. After all, the dogs followed her scent there. You then go out to a traditional fire escape staircase until the final level, which is a ladder onto the roof. It's scary, but there is no reason Elisa could not have done it.
If you go out onto a traditional fire escape staircase up the side of a building, till the final level is completely normal, going up the grates all the way to the roof, and at the very end it's just a ladder with like nothing to help you up.
American.
So you're climbing a ladder from one floor 14 floors up. So literally, if you fall, you could fall the whole way.
Yeah.
It's very scary, but there's no reason Elisa could not have done that. No way. Especially, like you said, if she's not in her right mind, what are you scared of? It's just heights, you know? People like that. I mean, honestly, I myself, as a tall man, wouldn't be walking around in LA Skid Row.
No.
Never mind as a tiny girl, you know, so she's obviously brave in one way or another.
However, there is another way. She could have exited up the stairwell that led right to the roof, which leads to a supposedly alarmed fire door. This door is supposed to be locked, and if opened or pushed on, it should set off an alarm. But people have pushed on this door since the incident and nothing has happened. It was noted that when people did get on the roof, there were cigarettes, beer bottles and graffiti up there, handprints on the side of the tank. So it's very possible other people made it up there too, at other points in time, proving it is far from impossible.
As an irrelevant note, I've put that it's worth mentioning that it's very noisy up there in downtown LA, meaning there was hardly any chance of being heard. So if she was screaming in the tank for help, for example, very unlikely anyone could have heard her because of all the cars beeping, shouting, police sirens, everything else going.
It's also 14 floors.
Yeah.
Above ground. Here's the thing about the door, because when I first heard about this story, that was a big point of contention about the door. There was no way she could get
Just
through
magical
it.
door, yeah.
It's a fire alarm door, so it would set off the alarms of the building if she went through it. The fact is she did.
I actually don't think she went through the door. I think she went straight through the window and up the
fire escape.
I literally do, yeah.
Well, what I mean is
I know what you mean,
the fact is she got on the roof.
She got on the roof, yeah.
So it wasn't, people made it sound like...
Who knows, was it propped open?
Yeah, people made it sound like it was completely impossible.
No, like I'm saying, it was Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
So the story you're getting is it's Mission Impossible trying to steal the diamonds or something, and there's laser grid everywhere. No way to do it.
But the fact is that she got up there somehow, and it's not entirely implausible for an employee to lie about locking a door so he doesn't get in trouble with the management, because wasn't the employee here, his surname Santiago? Or it's something...
That was the maintenance worker.
The maintenance worker, who would, I assume, be...
He had a key. He said he has a key for it, yeah.
And he was trying to keep his job. It's not too far-fetched for him to lie about propping the door. I mean, America has different employment laws than here, and you could easily get fired for something like that.
Yeah, you can get fired for pretty much any reason, yeah.
He probably doesn't want to lose that job.
So could you imagine if they go, oh, this woman's died on the roof, did you lock that door?
Is it your fault? Yeah, I could entirely see that.
I know what you mean.
I'd lie about that. Yeah, but if she went up the fire escape, there's more than one way to get up there. Here's the thing.
It's a fire escape. It's meant to escape the building.
That's the thing, yeah, you're meant to be able to leave a building in some way. So she made it up there, but the way that the media made it sound like a closed room mystery. There was
Houdini, isn't it?
Yeah. There's no way she could get up there. They made it sound like the containers were locked and there was no way that she could get in, and then it was locked again, you know. It's got a hatch on it that's closed, and this just doesn't make sense. And when things don't make sense, there's really only, you can eliminate the possible and you end up with the truth. That's what it is. It doesn't matter what people say, or, you know, they come up with their own facts of the thing, but they're not facts. They're just something that they thought,
it's their truth, as you say.
Their,
my truth.
The hotel manager in the Netflix documentary was a lot more interested in explaining why this was not her fault or the hotel's fault than being sad or respectful due to her death nearly 10 years ago at the time of the documentary. While I do agree with the decision of the courts on this issue and with the consensus that the hotel could not really predict that someone was going to go into the water tanks and drown, I find the manager suspicious, and I'm not the only one looking through the comments online. I'm not saying she did it or anything like that, but she is definitely suspicious. However, it would seem that she did get on the roof without setting off the alarms, and that others since then have been able to get on the roof, and the fact that there is a lot of graffiti up there and lots of beer cans shows that it is indeed possible to get on the roof and not at all impossible, implausible situation.
The people that were working that day, I believe it was the manager that said this, she said that if she had gone through the fire escape, there was an alarm on the desk where she works downstairs that would have gone off, and there's no way that her or her staff would ignore a blaring alarm on the desk. Now, once again, that's a bit of, oh, an alarm would have gone off on the desk, we wouldn't have ignored it.
Yeah.
But was there an alarm in 2019?
So I'm supposed to believe that this building, you know, that sounds like it's, to be honest, a piece of shit. It's in downtown LA. It doesn't sound like it's renovated, it's cheap.
Anyone can access that area from the hotel.
Anyone can access that area. I'm just gonna hazard a guess that maybe the alarm didn't even work. If there was an alarm on the door, even then, maybe it just didn't work.
And who's to say that they would have cared about an alarm?
Oh, they would.
What happens if every day some people come up the elevator from the other side of the hotel, the Cecil, because they're linked by the elevator? What if someone from the Cecil came and just kept busting through that door to have a cigarette every night?
Yeah.
And the staff downstairs were like, oh, for God's sake, not this alarm again.
Yeah.
Cover it up or turn off the sound or whatever.
Yeah.
Not saying you can, but it's a possibility. I've worked in jobs where people have ignored alarms.
Yeah.
People don't even know what an alarm is.
Yeah.
Like, we got a new staff on, it's like, what's that thing beeping up there? And they ignore it because they don't even know what it is at the time. So completely possible that they just ignored it.
People notice that if you look at the video, you can see that a lot of footage has been edited out and it has been slowed down. Why is this? This is very unusual for this kind of footage. Also, at some point, it looks like her face has been blurred out sometimes. It seems strange that the footage was released at all, because it really serves no purpose to the police or the public.
I mean, think about it. They released this footage so that the public can tell them, oh, we've seen this girl. I know, I saw her walking down the street. All the footage does is shows exactly where the police should be looking. The 14th floor where she disappeared and never left the hotel. So what's the point in releasing this footage to the public? If she was walking down the street on a camera, say, right, let's say somebody murdered her and she was walking down a Skid Row street and they had a picture of a man talking to her just before she disappeared. It could be like, did anyone see her on this time at this street? Did anyone see where these two people went in the public? But no, it's taken in a private hotel.
Yeah.
Like, what information can the public give you from that video? No, honestly though, what can they do?
Yeah.
What can they help you with? Oh, okay. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. So yeah, it's like with that girl that went missing, and it was a police officer, Sarah Everard, recently in the UK. The reason they caught him is because of the bus's dash cam in that location. So it kind of made sense to release footage like that. For example, who is this man that was talking to her? Or even just, it's just useful footage. You know what I mean? It's useful footage. Like, send us in your dash cams. But it just doesn't make any sense to me why it was released. And also, there's lots of women going missing around that area daily. It's Skid Row. Women turn up dead, missing, murdered, whatever, all the time. Why did so much go towards this case? Why did they put so much effort into this one girl? Why is there so many police around it?
I would have said it's missing white girl syndrome, but she wasn't white.
No,
So
I understand, you could say, yeah, if they go missing in Skid Row, it's just because they're poor people.
Yeah.
Don't like them, whatever. But I get from the vibe from this that it wasn't just that. There's 60 seconds of footage that's disappeared from it. I mean, you can't, because the timestamp's also edited out over the top of it, which again, why? It looks like there's something placed on top of the timestamp in the video. What does that serve? Why do they care that the public might? Doesn't that help the public if they know exactly what time it was on the footage? Strange that it's edited out. Of course, then that 60 seconds has become like the Watergate tapes or something like that, where it's like, obviously the murderer was there in that 60 seconds. He was wearing an invisible cloak.
Yeah.
He was wearing an invisibility cloak, and that's why they cut it out, because it's government technology and it was an alien. That's what happened in that 60 seconds that they cut out. The obvious good part was cut out.
I'm not really interested in the comings and goings of this elevator that she was in. I'm I'm more interested in what she did that day before, because isn't the day that she went missing, is that the day she went to the bookstore?
I believe it was.
Yeah, you see,
Where the books were delivered.
I'm more interested in what happened then, because I don't know, so anything could have happened in that 24-hour period instead of a 60-second period on a list.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
something-
What happened before that day?
Nobody seems to talk about that.
It's just 60 seconds
Yeah.
missing on the elevator footage. But again, that's all the footage we had.
Yeah.
They sent this out, said this girl is missing. You look at that footage and you're like, well, this is strange. Yeah. The footage is also slowed down about 30%. The police have said there is a few reasons for these changes, and the slowed down footage is to make it easier to get a good look at her. Can't you just pause it?
I think they just assume that the public are too stupid to pause it, or if it's being played on broadcast TV,
I suppose so,
they
yeah.
wouldn't have an option. I mean, they do, but...
They also said that the hotel definitely did not edit the footage before giving it to the police. But if this is the case, and with the case being so scrutinized by the public, why would they just not release the full unedited version, which they say they still have, to ease people's concerns? Another thing I was thinking, did the hotel edit it before giving it to the police? And obviously that question has been asked by a lot of people. And the hotel manager said, definitely not possible. That's the evidence.
Yeah.
So you just go take that as evidence. Now, let me say, when I worked at my old job, I could edit all kinds of footage. I wasn't a manager or anything, but I used to have to give footage to the police all the time. Every single day, pretty much. And I was just a worker there, and I had full access to do whatever I wanted with that footage. I could have deleted it, oops, it's gone. I could have edited it and anything and given it to the police. Never did, because obviously there was no interest in me. It wasn't major crimes or anything. It wasn't murder or anything. It was just footage I needed to give the police. But the point I'm making is, say if I did do something there, I could have erased it or edited it off the camera and given it to them.
Yeah.
Easy. I'm sorry, but I just don't buy the line.
Yeah.
You know, even most of my bosses at the time didn't even know I could do that.
Yeah.
So how does she know? Well, great evidence. Thanks for clearing that up. The hotel manager says she provided the footage to the police. The police say that with the footage they are withholding certain details from the public, which is them explaining why some of it is missing or edited. The police say no changes to the footage were done by the hotel. They say there was nothing suspicious with the original video they received.
I don't think it's as suspicious as people are making out to be, because from what it sounds like from Jump Street on this one is that the police either didn't really care that much because of the location, which is typical of downtown LA. I mean, didn't the manager say that 80 people had died in the hotel in the decade that she had worked?
Yeah,
80.
at least.
Like, I would say that's, if it was 2, that's ridiculously high. In a decade, 80 people.
Remember, they've got like 700 rooms.
Yeah.
But that's probably, yeah, you know, I'd say more than 2.
It's still kind of, you can see why the police would be like this.
1 to 3 phone calls a day to the police at the hotel.
Yeah, I mean, it shows that they wouldn't be too enamored with this, because it's just a daily occurrence for them, so why even put in the effort?
And another thing I agree with the manager is when she said, you know, when Elisa came and did the pose and said, I'm crazy.
Yeah.
If she'd have called the police, they wouldn't have.
No,
like she says.
no.
Why would they?
No, well, they wouldn't come for that. No, there's no.
Well, that's just normal.
Yeah.
Like you said, that's just walk out the door and you'll get someone to do that to you.
Yeah, they get calls there every day. It's another dead girl, and they're just going to assume it's another dead prostitute, because that's probably what the majority of murders there are. That's what I can imagine. Anyway, maybe I'm wrong, but
no,
I can think that that's the main cause of crime, is people killing prostitutes.
Well, it's one of the major forms of crime in general.
So, focusing on this video and stuff like that, obviously they wanted people to see it. I can guess that they probably did show it on TV at some point, hence why they would slow it down. For the timestamp being edited or the 60 seconds being missing, things like that, they're really quite easy to explain. It was probably just cut for brevity. If there was a 60-second scene where she just left, wasn't there, why not cut it? Nobody's going to stare at an empty lift for 60 seconds.
That's another point. She just wasn't on the footage.
She just wasn't there, or the footage was too bad. It was of the back of her head. When they're using this video to identify a girl, If it's only showing the back of her head, that doesn't need to be seen. It's perfectly logical when you look at it.
And I suppose you never really expected people to look so much into exactly what she was doing and exactly where she was going.
No, they just
where she was.
to identify her. I mean, why they couldn't have done that with a photo, I don't know.
But they did as well.
Yeah, it's...
To be honest, I think the reason was pure frustration.
Yeah.
You know when you go through the playbook and the police are like, right, we've been doing this for so long now, we've got no idea where she is, what other options have we got?
Yeah.
Ask the public. That's literally it.
But they probably didn't care too much about this at the start, so it doesn't sound like they were doing a bang-up police job anyway.
Well, if they did, they would have checked the tanks.
Yeah, if they did, they would have checked the tanks. So we've got more evidence of the police just being bad at the job than murder. I can say that for sure.
Why did the answer change on the autopsy report form? Police say the dating on the form was just a simple mistake. To explain this to you without showing it to you, basically on an autopsy record, they've got a tick in a box and a cross in a box where they've ticked 2 boxes but crossed one out. You look at the dates, one of them looks like a clear 15th and the other one looks like a clear 18th. I originally thought they were talking utter shit, to be honest, because it's like, it's the same date. It is definitely the same date. You're just seeing it wrong. And I thought that's a bit of gaslighting. 15, 18, you know. Because it does look like that. But personally, if you look at it, you can see where the pen's gone over, but the ink's not come out as they're doing the date. So if you look at them, it's one of them, you know, optical illusion, where somebody looks at it and that looks like a 15 and somebody else it looks like an 8. But if you think about the 5, you can make an 8 from the 5, can't you? You know what I mean? You can make an 8 from a 5. So originally I was like, yeah, this is definitely some cover-up thing. And also it's because originally it changed from undetermined to accident, and then it looked like a 3-day change. So once again, that looks like a major conspiracy, doesn't it? It looks to me like somebody autopsied the body, said on the 15th, they said it's undetermined, we don't know why she died. And then 3 days later, it suddenly changes to accidental, which then looks to me like some higher up came in and went, no, that's not undetermined, that's an accident. And then 3 days later, it changes. So it's like, why did they take 3 days to change it? They didn't. What they say happened is they changed from undetermined as an accident to accident, if you know what I mean. So they originally clicked undetermined, but the 15th then went, oh shit, I meant accident. Crossed it out, put it again as the 15th, but it looked like the 18th. So it looked like 3 days later, the date has changed. I actually believe that after looking at it now, because originally I was like, yep, some scams going on here. This is like the dodgy stuff I'm aware of all the time. Then I suddenly looked at it and went, no, actually, yeah, it is. You know, it's definitely wrong.
That sounds perfectly logical.
It's a mistake.
Yeah, I know, like trying to turn something that's an obvious human mistake. Oh no, someone who's working in the autopsy. Oh, they'd never make a mistake. Of course they will. Yeah, everyone makes mistakes.
And it's also completely possible that they did. Autopsies change.
Yeah.
Sometimes they put undetermined because we don't know right now, and then they go, oh, actually, no, it was this.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know anything about autopsies. I don't know like anything about how that works, but I'm guessing that if you have a form to fill in, yeah, you can make a mistake.
Oh yeah, a lot of it as well looks like it's kind of been thrown down on a random table and just written.
Yeah.
That's it. It's not like you sat there in an office and filled it, fill in the box.
They're doing it.
They're literally writing it on a piece of paper like this, just writing it down. It's not like, oh, we've got to make sure we get the black ink and it has to be in there. So yeah, I don't see anything in that one, and I actually believe the explanation on that one. One thing you'll see if you look back on original video comments from years ago, and even now, even since the documentary came out, it kind of re-highlighted interest in this case. That wasn't the reason I wanted to do this. I've always said if I do some kind of YouTube channel, I want to do this case because I've always been interested by it, and it's a big one. And if you watch other people's videos on it, I've watched quite a few people's videos on it, they really do not go into enough depth for you to really say, I understand now and I know more about it. They kind of just report on the comments and the ideas. They never really fully explain what actually happened with this case. They always do it really quick. And I remember watching in the documentary, I think it was in the documentary, there's a YouTuber at the time, a very young guy. He did a video and his idea was, why would someone decide to go swimming in a water tank? Like, is that disrespectful or something? Like,
Like,
Honestly, he
stupid.
thought like she's just dumb.
She's just an idiot. Yeah.
Like, oh, I just went for a swim in the water tank.
No, she seemed like a pretty intelligent person. For what I mean, it's been a long time since I've read a Tumblr post,
not
and
dumb,
I have read them a while back,
Long
and other stuff that she's written, and she doesn't seem like she's a complete idiot. So
Like, why would you went for a swim? Is that your theory? Yeah. But another one that annoys me, and every single person that looks at this has always said, the elevator's acting weird. It's not doing what it should do. It's extremely strange. And this is like the number one thing is always the elevator freaks me out.
Yeah,
I've never seen an elevator do this. And I've always thought to myself, have you honestly never seen like an elevator mess up? Because I have.
I've watched enough of these Chinese videos.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. It's like I've seen technology not do it. I've seen elevators where the door will not shut if somebody's even near it because it has a sensor. Like you walk in front of the door, it will immediately open. If you're even near the door, it will immediately open. And all I thought from watching it with her pressing all them buttons is it's either janked out because she's pressed too many buttons or she's pressing a button that's keeping the door open. Right? And that's what I've always thought because there's a button in an elevator that people seem to not realize exists, a door hold button. Now, this doesn't even come from the police. This comes from people that were sleuthing around and doing their own investigation, which has been done by thousands of people now, no doubt, where they've gone and done their own videos in the actual hotel. And legitimately, the buttons that she pressed, you can see on the thing, and they've shown it in the exact elevator where she was, that she presses the door hold button. And that door hold button, once pressed, has been timed to keep the door open for 2 whole minutes. So it is completely logical and completely fine that the elevator is acting like it is. People go on and on about how paranormal it is that the elevator isn't working and that it must be some ghost or some demon or she must be possessed or some stupid, ridiculous stuff like that. And it is literally just technology. That is it. You're scared of technology.
Yeah, I mean, it makes more sense that the Illuminati would keep the door open, so the lizard people on the moon can possess her brain. But it's probably just the lift in an old building, I imagine, that's run down.
Put it this way, you know when the Cecil was built? 1914. That means next year it is 100 years old. And I bet you the elevators probably are. Because they want to change them. But yeah, obsession with the elevator is like the number one thing. People really freaked out about the elevator and it really has always confused me. Because every time I've been in an elevator, I've noticed there's always someone will say, oh, press the button to hold the door, or hold the door when they're trying to jump in it. And there's a button on there that says door hold. You know, what do you think happens? You just walk in the door and it just crushes you.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a set of lifts and one of them's been out of order.
Yep. All the time.
Well, they don't always.
How often do you go into somebody's like residential flats and its elevator's out of order?
Yeah.
And you ask them and they go, oh, that's been out of order for a year.
Yeah.
This theory always gets mentioned online in comments. It is based upon a game that can be played with the elevator that is similar to people playing Bloody Mary. It is worth mentioning that even if she was playing this, it doesn't mean anything paranormal happened, and I find it disrespectful to Elisa and people with mental health issues in general.
People saying, it's a ghost when it's actually mental health. It's kind of like really stigmatizing to the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
They see somebody, which we've seen in real life, doing these hand gestures and things, and for people to immediately say, that's a demon possessing her.
Yeah.
Rather than going for the more logical or real grounded mental health, like we have a brain and it goes wrong sometimes in some people. A lot of people don't like this theory even being talked about. But what I'm trying to discuss in this theory is, was she playing that game? Doesn't mean that she went to the spirit realm or something like that, but she does look like she's playing a game. She's out and in, hiding, doing stuff.
Might as well let me explain this one, because I'm a resident paranormal fiction guy.
Go ahead, I've written down the description.
I know what the elevator game is, because this is another 4chan. I don't know if it came from 4chan. I don't think it did. I think it was a general creepypasta thing in general. At the time, a few years before actually, it was quite a fad to write fiction about this thing called the elevator game. The general premise was that you would go into an elevator and I think you pressed a bunch of buttons. The story is always different. It's either, press a bunch of buttons or press buttons in a different order. You go up to the 4th floor and then a man will jump in the elevator with you, but you're not allowed to look at him or talk to him. And if you do, then something scary will happen, and it will always end up with you eventually going to some spooky paranormal place. Like, the mirror realm where everything's kind of the same, but not. It's just one of these things. It was a pretty fun fad at the time, but The thing is, if she was playing that, and I don't think she was, wouldn't she be playing it with someone else? Wouldn't she be recording it on her phone, maybe?
It clearly looks like she thinks someone else is there, so possibly playing it with her hallucination.
To me, if she was in a total fugue state, or even half a fugue state, it could be like she's having an hallucination and it's based off something that she's read recently. You know, like when you encounter something in your day-to-day life, that's a very minor event, but for that night, for some reason, you dream specifically of that thing. And it could be anything that happened throughout the day. Normally, it won't be something like, you've been at work for 8 hours, but you won't dream about that. You'll dream about a dog that you encountered for 2 seconds on the way home instead. For some reason, your brain fixated on that instead of the 8 hours of work that you've done. It's possible, this is just a theory, I don't really believe this, but if she had read something about the elevator game, entirely plausible, because it was popular at that time, maybe her brain subconsciously fixated on that for the time that she was in the lift, and she was sort of in this hallucinogenic state of mind where she was subconsciously thinking about this, so then she sort of thought it was real. That sounds a bit out there, but
definitely possible.
It's plausible. Like, I have no evidence to back that up at all. That's just my own musing, but it is possible that could have been a factor.
We went over this one initially when we were talking anyway, but the murder theory, obviously with her being naked, was she assaulted? We know that she wasn't, but people would say maybe by a hotel worker who would have had a key to the roof, with staff there knowing she was acting erratic and was possibly vulnerable, because as we read earlier, she'd already been caught in an area, if you remember, by staff that she wasn't allowed to be in and asked to leave. So once again, that fits the MO of she was wandering around the hotel going to strange places. So she was already caught in a you've broken the law kind of area and removed out of it. And then she went and did it again. But having said that, obviously the murder theory would come into if one of the staff was like, oh, this girl's a bit weird, she's going into random places, maybe I can take her into a random place because she's doing it anyway. One of the theories around her being murdered, obviously, like we were saying earlier, no way of getting on the roof, no way of putting the hatch on, but as we've discussed, we know that she could get on the roof, other people have done it, and people have done it since then. There's stuff up there to prove other people have been up there, and also the maintenance worker, he put the thing back on.
Yeah.
I presume he put it back on out of dignity and respect for the body, and also you don't want anyone else to find it all of a sudden by accident, so he put the lid back on. When the police turned up, they did remove the lid again, but obviously somewhere along the way they forgot to say the lid was already open when he found her. So to the police's perspective, they just went and opened the lid, saw her body, but then you'd know, well, how did he see her?
Yeah.
The lid, how did you? So that's why the murder theory gets crossed off. Now, am I saying that there's no possible way that someone else was involved? No, because we don't know that for a fact. But all the evidence points towards that. From what we are told, from forensics, from the fact that you can't carry a body up a ladder very easily or squeeze through and put it into the tank that she was in was very difficult to get to without a body. So how would you get her in there without her getting scratched up or bruised? Even if she was dead, you'd have some kind of evidence on her where it looked like there was nothing that we are, if we're believing what we've been told, and I have no reason to believe that we can't believe that.
The dark water theory. Another unsettling part of the Elisa Lam case is the similarities to the movie Dark Water. The American version came out in 2005. It is based on a Japanese movie made in 2002 of the same name.
It's based off a book.
Yeah, which in turn is based on a 1996 novel by Koji Suzuki.
No, it's a short story.
It is a short story, yeah. Called Floating Water.
Is it? I thought no. Wait, yeah, it might be. Yeah.
That's why I've got it down as I've.
The book that I read was called Dark Water. So
right, fair enough.
It's the first,
one or the other.
It's the first short story, but it might just be translated into English.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
The movie involves a girl named Cecilia and a case in which residents of a hotel complain about issues with the water, which it turns out is caused by a corpse in a water tank. There are a lot of things in this movie which link strangely into Elisa Lam's case. It's also set in a sketchy hotel, including one of the characters wearing similar clothes to Lam herself. In the trailer, it also showed an elevator malfunctioning, which could be linked to the issues with the elevator people would bring up in the Elisa Lam footage.
When I was not paying attention to dates and so forth, and I first saw the Elisa Lam footage, and I wasn't really interested in it, has this happened now or whatever, it just popped up and I saw it. I thought, oh, is this what that movie's based off? Like, this girl, that's what I thought. I was like, this is obviously inspiration for the Elisa Lam case, is obviously inspiration for the Dark Water movie. That's how strange. Like, that is pretty big coincidence though, isn't it? So this theory goes into, was there somebody so obsessed with Dark Water that they reenacted the murder?
No. Are we talking about the Jennifer Connelly one?
I believe so,
Yeah.
The American one.
Yeah.
Well, basically, there is a theory out there that you got a copycat killer, which it has happened. People get obsessed with movies and try to reenact them in real life. But a bit elaborate, don't you think?
So they say this one character was dressed almost the same.
Like a red jacket.
That's an incredible coincidence. It makes me laugh that, was it the lead investigator? One of the investigators said about coincidences.
Not in the documentary. That is just something I've seen an investigator say,
1951. You might have heard of this, I don't think you have, but I always find this interesting when people don't talk about coincidences. But when I talk about Dennis the Menace, that's a bit of a tangent, but people in the UK are confused about, because I'm sure maybe 90s kids growing up saw the Dennis the Menace movie and thought, who's Mr. Wilson and why is Dennis blonde? Because the Dennis the Menace that we know wears a black and red jumper and he has a dog called Nasher.
Black hair.
Well, he had black hair and he was featured in a comic called The Beano. And the thing is, the reason there's two Dennis the Menaces is because of a complete coincidence. 1951, March either 12th or the 15th, there seems to be a bit of dispute here. Two comics came out the same date, one in America and one in the UK, both called Dennis the Menace, featuring a child who is poorly behaved, let's say, although the American one is a bit more innocent than the UK one. But that's something I've always wondered about when people talk about coincidences. Two comics, the same day, the same year, both
same name.
Dennis the Menace with the same premise. That's a coincidence. They do happen.
There was also two men that were twins and were in an adoption home that separated them. No one but the adoption home knew who these boys were and that they were actually brothers and twins. Not only did both their adopted parents call them both James, they both got married to a woman with the same name as each other. When that marriage broke down, they both got married to another woman with the same name as each other. They even had similar jobs, similar likes and everything, and they never even were aware that they had a twin until they met. And they had all them coincidences, that no one could have possibly known to all link up. So yeah, it's likely a coincidence.
It's not entirely the most difficult thing to think of because, what was the author's name? Koji?
Yeah, Suzaki. Sounds like
So I have read his books. He is the same author of The Ring. Everyone knows what The Ring is. And the sequel to The Ring, which has never been put on film actually, I think it has been put on film once and nobody watched it, but I've read the book. It's called Spiral, and that has a similar story to Dark Water. We have a woman go up onto the roof of a building, fall through something, and then get stuck in the roof until she dies. Are they copying that as well? It's just a bit.
Correct, yeah. I believe that one is written out. Very, very strange, but coincidence. Now, this one is the one that originally got me on the super coincidence train, is the cover-up of the Elisa Lam test. Now, reading through this, you immediately will say, yeah, this is something dodgy, because it's unbelievable.
This theory focuses on Elisa being a cover-up for a tuberculosis outbreak. Lam Elisa is a test done for tuberculosis. As you will notice, it is Elisa Lam with her first and last name switched around. It stands for The short form of that is LAM. The ELISA part is enzyme link immunosorbent assay. Around the time of her death, there was an outbreak of tuberculosis, or TB, in Skid Row, which is the area where Elisa was staying. Worth noting that the test LAM ELISA had been called that for much longer than Elisa Lam had been born. So the theory, which sounds like the plot of some movie, 4,600 people were exposed to TB, mostly being homeless people as they inhabit the area. The health department arrived at the hotel and they say we have an outbreak and people need to be tested. There is a belief that either Elisa was the cause of the outbreak after she died and she was used as a bioweapon to reduce the homeless population, or that her name was to try and cover up people looking into the outbreak, as they would mainly bring up the death of Elisa Lam. To make it even stranger, the University of British Columbia in Canada, where Elisa took classes, has a fairly well-known TB research centre.
So you can see how all this adds together. She comes from a TB research centre school in Canada, suddenly turns up in LA, dies. Tuberculosis comes everywhere after she's been in the drinking water. It sounds like a plot of a movie, doesn't it? Like, it is. It's something that I would absolutely say that the government would do.
We knew about the Tuskegee experiment.
Yeah, they would do something like this. But here's the question. Would they go and be so bold as to call her the exact name of the tuberculosis test? Because doesn't that kind of give it away?
Yeah.
And also, there are so many better ways of reducing people than having a woman contaminate them. The autopsy also said she was found not to have tuberculosis. Now, obviously, they could have covered that up, but that's just another part of it. She didn't have it according to the autopsy. It is very suspicious and it's very coincidental. Absolutely very. But like you said earlier, it happens.
Yeah.
Things like that happen.
Yeah, it is a fun one to think of. It is outlandish, but I mean, the experiment's not literally called Elisa Lam. Let's say that it's called Lam Elisa. So
Backwards.
it's not exactly the same, guys. That's a cope from my end, trying to
You try and disprove it now.
trying to rationalise
It's
it.
coping about
Yeah,
it.
I'm coping hard. This is what
You're on
the comments will say.
You're on the side now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm completely flipped. We never landed on the moon.
That's it. This video is banned from
Yeah.
YouTube now.
The invisibility cloak for the military theory. Elisa tweeted that a Canadian company had made a kind of invisibility cloak. It is believed that she was interested in this because she was a fan of Harry Potter. The article she posted was from the Huffington Post. When people searched for the hotel, there was an invisible light agency company that was either across the street from the hotel, or some say it was literally inside the hotel. The pictures on the actual website Elisa shared were just mock-ups and Photoshop. There is no evidence to suggest that it was actually working. As of today, over 10 years later, there is still no evidence of a good working invisibility technology to cloak a person. Personally, to me, the Invisible Light Agency sounds like a company that sells hidden lighting, for example behind TVs, under cars, etc. A theory that relates to this is that Elisa was interacting with someone in the lift, but we cannot see them on camera because they are invisible. This theory fails to answer why the invisible person left no evidence or damage to Elisa, or any other trace that the invisibility cloak would not be able to hide.
So once again, another write-off.
Well, invisible cloaks do actually exist, which is a hell of a statement. I remember them from several years ago, but if you YouTube the legitimate invisibility cloak, you'll see that they suck.
Yeah, they're not like they're not like Harry Potter.
No,
Put
they
it
don't
that way.
really make you invisible. They're a cool experiment.
It's like camouflage can make you appear invisible, but you're obviously
Yeah.
not invisible.
Like they're a decent experiment, and I think they used a bunch of cameras or something that move light in certain ways. But I mean, they would be. Such a stupid topic to talk about, but they would be effective if you were hidden in a bush in the middle of the night,
Not on a
but
camera.
not on a camera. You know, in a way.
And also, we're now a decade later. Don't you think some kind of government agency or military would have leaked this technology to us now?
Yeah.
People have gone online and figured out that the last bookstore, if you look up the website and then look up the registrar information for their online domain name, there is a zip code that comes up for the mailing address. If you put that zip code into Google Maps, it brings up Burnaby, BC. The zip code V5G4S2. The pinpoint is directly on the cemetery where Elisa is buried.
Now, in the documentary, it doesn't really elaborate this. It just kind of says, if you do this thing on the internet, then this thing happens. But essentially, their domain name is obviously provided by somebody.
Yeah.
They pay for it. And on that website's postal address and zip code, the pointer points directly on the cemetery where she's buried. Now, I looked it up and that is over 2,000 miles away from the last bookstore. So that pinpoint just happens to be at a location exactly where she was buried. It's not like she got buried behind the last bookstore and oh, the domain happened to be there. It's 2,000 miles away.
Stated in comments on this theory with a link explaining this in much greater detail, even too complex for myself. If you look up the funeral home, they don't have the same postal code as the PO box. The funeral home postcode is V5G3M1, but if you search the registrant privacy company that hosts the website domain for the last bookstore's website online, you'll find that some of the address details for the PO box have the postal code V5G4S2, which drops the pin in the cemetery when typed into Google Maps, and some have the code V5G3HO, which highlights that entire area of Burnaby when typed into Google Maps. If you look at where the exact center of the highlighted area is, you'll see that it's precisely where the pin drops where V5G4S2 is typed in Google Maps. So the likelihood is that at some point the postal code for the post office, where the PO box is located, was changed, so it's interpreted differently in Google Maps. Either way, it's still an extremely strange coincidence, especially taking into account how many other strange coincidences there are in the Elisa Lam case. What's even stranger is that where the pin drops is very close to where Elisa's actual grave is.
Which is a bit insane, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I've always thought about that one. To me, anyway, I don't really know anything about how Google Maps pin work, but I've always thought that it's not entirely implausible for somebody to. I'm sure somebody has to manually set that pin. It's not done automatically yet.
Well, it looks like it's pulling up an old address detail. From what I gather from what that person I just read out from.
Yes,
because it's very technical.
I've always assumed that somebody would have to manually set that pin, and it's somebody who's having a bit of a giggle.
So you think someone kind of messed it around?
So yeah,
knowing that so many people are looking into it.
Yeah, that's
like another breadcrumb.
It just seems very likely to me that that would be the answer to that. That it's just somebody messing around, because it's a bit too much of a coincidence. But
you know what the internet's like, though. There's a lot of things that people can do that not everybody's aware of.
Yeah. So
you know what I mean?
What's the next coincidence?
Yeah, there's not much to say on that one. It's very strange. It's mentioned in the documentary, and I have searched for this. I'm not going to lie and say I searched very hard, but I searched the usual places, comments, and typing it in, looking through Google pages. I could find no reference to this. But please comment below. Yeah, always comment as well if you think we've done something wrong or made some errors. It's always possible. And like we say, these videos are more for entertainment than exact fact. But if someone can explain this theory more to me, I am actually interested. They mention it in the documentary, but they kind of brush it aside without really saying anything about it. But apparently there's a theory out there relating to Bible passages of the button she presses in the elevator, which sounds absolutely ridiculous, I know. But I'm just interested in what the theory is. Basically, it says something about her pressing buttons and it matches up with scriptures, and that's pretty much all they say about it in the documentary. I'm just wondering what scriptures this is, just out of interest, purely, because I'm trying to cover every angle I can. I don't honestly believe that has anything to do with it, but I'm just interested in everybody's theories.
Morbid, the musician, stayed at the Cecil. He is a performer of death metal. His music and artistic nature is about violence and death. People discovered his Died in Pain video of a woman being chased running away from a killer until she finally gets murdered. It appeared a couple of days after Elisa was found. Then they found another video with blood on his face and Ted Bundy pictured in the background. Lyrics from one of his songs was, "I will let your tender remains rest in the deep cold ocean where no sounds or screams will ever be heard. I'm thinking China." Lyrics seemingly to be about a girl dying in water, possibly a Chinese girl. People would see this as hints or a message, perhaps a calling card of a killer, producing a trophy as music for each of his murders. Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, who is rumoured may have been at the Cecil Hotel before her death, is another picture on his wall in one of his videos. However, her connection with the Cecil has never been confirmed. Morbid Pablo Vergara, his real name, when interviewed says he does black metal. He did an interview with Netflix. Morbid is his stage name and is a character he portrays, or the dark side of himself. Because of the circumstances, people were obsessed with him killing her, to the point he was getting constant death threats and accusations. He responded posting a video with a mask and a voice distorter on, saying he was innocent.
Which to me is quite funny, because it's like, they already know who you are. Like, they've already seen your face, and why you're wearing a distorter and a mask. I don't understand. But honestly, I do feel bad for this guy because, like he says, it's a persona. He's acting a character out. People love that stuff, blackmail. It's like us acting as detectives. It's like that's just his persona. He's not really like going around killing people and stuff. He's just making dark songs. But he did an interview for Netflix. He says he hasn't talked about any of this in 7 years, but decided that he had to face his problems one day and talk about it.
6 days after Elisa's body was found in the tank, Morbid woke up to a message from one of his friends that said, "Why are you on the news?" The friend sent a link, and the link took Morbid to a Taiwanese TV channel, and it was talking about him possibly being the murderer of Elisa Lam. He then got hundreds of messages from people all over the world asking if he had killed her, calling him a murderer, threatening to kill him, everything you could imagine. He was shocked. He had never even heard of Elisa Lam until this very moment. The Mexican police showed up to where he lived and began asking him questions. However, he was not charged with anything. Later on, he realized he was accused of being a killer because people on the internet found a video of him staying at the Cecil Hotel in 2012.
February, so a year ago, for 3 days, literally a year before she died. So how does that correlate to anything? Well, a guy stayed there a year ago, so he killed her.
When she died, he wasn't even in the country. He was in Mexico working on an album. He has stamps on his passports to prove this. Contracts signed when he was there working on things. His lyrics and music are dark, but it's just music in his art. He tried to defend himself, making a video with a mask and voice changer, declaring he was innocent. He did that because he was paranoid, but people would just not let it go. They flagged his accounts. His Facebook and email were also terminated. False accusations, death threats every day for weeks and weeks. They broke him down mentally. He can't do his music and art anymore because he feels powerless, and he's gone to a bad place. He had a meltdown, attempted to end his life, and at one point ended up in a psychiatric hospital. He says that the bullies carry on and nothing happens, but he feels changed and he lost his creativity. He is trying to rebuild himself, but it sucks hard. It's going to loom over him forever. Morbid said nobody ever apologized when it was ruled as an accident. He makes a good comment that being cyberbullied can be lethal to some people, and that he sees the Cecil as a portal to hell, and he is another kind of victim of it. Elisa was bipolar and was off her medication at this time. Her family reported when she was off medication, she would sometimes have episodes and hallucinations and extreme paranoia, thinking someone was following her. It was most likely she went to the roof after this, saw the tanks as a place to hide and climbed in, and probably removed her clothes to try and stay afloat after realizing she couldn't get out. Also, the lid wasn't closed when she was found. The maintenance guy found her after reports of discolored water in the hotel. In the water tank with the lid open, then shut it himself before he went down to report it to the manager. Then when the police arrived, that's why the lid was closed. The doors didn't close because the button on the bottom of the column she pressed was door hold, which keeps the doors open for 2 minutes. It's worth noting when police first talked to the family, it wasn't really mentioned how bad her mental health was. Her sister later said that Elisa did have issues taking all of her medications, and had been hospitalized once before. She appeared to have bipolar 1, the more severe form according to experts. She could have disorganized thinking, issues telling fantasy from reality. The elevator footage appears to show someone who is suffering from mental issues to professionals, issues telling fantasy from reality. She looks like a person with delusions and it fits in her pattern. She is even known to have people chasing her and voices telling her to be afraid. Someone is coming to get you. Her sister said her hiding is in character of her delusions. According to experts, the person will have highs and lows. They have depression and mania, not needing a lot of sleep, racing thoughts, risk-taking. That bipolar type 1 is a dangerous disorder.
It was also noted on the autopsy earlier, if you remember, that it appeared she wasn't taking her medications properly because she had too much of it left over than she should have had from the prescription. So for example, if you got to take 28 of these a month and she's still got 28 and the prescription's been issued for 2 weeks, you know that she's not taking the right amount of meds, most likely. Also, it was found that she had very low amounts of the medication in her system, much lower than it should be. So unfortunately, to me, looking at it from a logical point, that seems like most likely the exact thing that happened. Not only does it fit her character, according to her parents and her sister, but as we've discussed through this whole case, she can get on the roof. She was found. There was no discrepancies between how the tank was opened and the lift didn't move and all that kind of stuff. It's just a very simple, cut, dry case with a lot of weird coincidences. And that's what I believe.
Occam's razor, once we eliminate the improbable, all we're left with is the truth, like I said earlier, and I think I phrased it differently because I stole it from Sherlock Holmes, which I'm not even sure if it's from Sherlock Holmes. But out of all of these conspiracies, what have we got? We've got a time-traveling black metal musician, government Harry Potter cloaks, ghosts, the government hiding their movie scripts within some TB case, the pins on Google Maps. And I know all of these things are coincidences and they're strange, but there's no solid connection between any of these things.
All of the loose ends don't tie to anything.
There's no answer to any of it. It doesn't make sense. And what it really is, the simplest thing is that it was mental health, and it's something that a lot of people don't understand. And I think that scares people. Are scared of what they don't understand, and that's why it became this mythology around Bible scriptures hidden in the lift buttons and the elevator games.
It is definitely lightning in a bottle of a case.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that 1 in a billion kind of things, but it happens.
Like I've said with the Chris Watts thing as well, a lot of people get emotionally invested in these stories, and people want a real answer, and they want the good end of a movie where somebody gets convicted of these horrible crimes, and we know everything. There's nothing left that's vague or disappointing, but that's the truth. That's what reality is. And in my opinion, we're not left with anything vague in this case. The conspiracies are fun to talk about, but that's really it. Because I think what we really should be focusing on is education around mental health and how it affects people. She was from did she grow up in Canada, I think?
Yeah, Vancouver, Canada.
But she was traveling through America. She was in this place that she was unfamiliar with, around people that were probably not the best people.
Very brave.
Yeah, she was probably feeling homesick and lonely, and all of this stuff combines together to result in just a breakdown of her mental health.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was suicide.
I mean, if part of her mental health is paranoia, like they said, being somewhere where you could get killed, that's going to make it even worse.
Yeah, it was her looking around the lift. We've seen the video and she looks like she's paranoid, and that's what it seems to me. And people come up with all these theories, and it's got to be this and it's got to be that, and they never home in on the truth is that it's just somebody who is unfortunately having a bit of an episode.
I think the police could definitely help with being less vague about certain things, like footage. But
she needed help that she wasn't getting, and that's the sad thing about this, is that it resulted in a tragedy when it really didn't need to. If we really understood more about mental health.
Yeah, with her having, like you said, with her having bipolar 1, I'm not 100% sure about her previous history. Obviously, she was getting pills for it and things, but there's a possibility doctors along the way or somewhere could have said, maybe it's not a good idea for her to go on this holiday alone, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
I do agree with that. I do find it a bit strange that her parents would let a 21-year-old with mental health issues go on.
I mean, they can't stop her because she's an adult.
Because she's a legal adult.
But you could also say, this girl suffers from this.
Yes.
And I don't let her do this.
Well, to me, that's the truth. If other people believe otherwise, if you want to believe it's ghosts, if you want to believe it's possession, that's fine. But you really need to focus on the truth here. The fact of the matter is that everything points to her having a mental health crisis and just not getting the help that she really needed at that time. And that's a shame. But
a lot of these cases end with that pretty much, though, don't they? Like most of the time, even murders and stuff end with this person suffering with this condition or having a mental break, and then this happened.
Yeah.
Like that is the problem, and people would much rather it be some kind of ghost or something like that.
So looking back on this and all the information and theories and evidence I have come up with, I am personally of the opinion this was an accidental drowning due to her mental health issues. My theory is people wanted to be something, and with all of these coincidences in any other case, I would be right on board with it being a cover-up of some form. At least if there is a killer or a monster, so to speak. It's easy to hate a physical reason for a death, but what can we do against bipolar? There is no person to catch, no monster to put in jail, just a sad event that none of us can do anything about. No real justice can be served. It's also worth mentioning that if you suffer from mental health issues, as many of us, including myself, do, please seek help and know that no matter how bad life gets, you will be surprised how it can change in the future. Just know that we here care about you, even if you feel like no one else does. Cecil closed January the 1st, 2017. The hotel was sold to a group in New York worth upwards of $80 million. Half of it is going to be low-income housing and other half luxury hotel. The new owner wants to have a bar put up on the roof and a wading pool. The old manager wishes it all the success and that the hotel deserves another chance to become a positive thing. It is currently, at the time of this video, 100 years old since being built and will be celebrating its 100th year this year. With the manager, if you watch the documentary, it feels like she's hiding something, but it could just be like her own guilt. I'm not saying she's hiding the physical evidence like a gun behind the desk. I mean, like, she seems a lot more interested in defending herself as a person than, oh, I'm sorry. She never says, I'm sorry that she died here, you know. Or what I would have said if I was her is, while I don't think there's anything I personally could have done, I wish there was. If I could go back and make sure that she couldn't drown in the tank, I'd do anything to do that. She never says anything like that. It's just basically like, how was I supposed to know someone was going to die in a hotel? That's basically the attitude you get. And that's the vibe I don't like from her. She has no sympathy whatsoever. It's like, no one's saying it's your fault. It's not your fault she had bipolar. It's not your fault that she drowned. But you were the manager. Surely you wished there'd be something else you could do. But it seems more like I said, that she seems like Elisa dying there was a massive inconvenience and nuisance to her.
Yeah, just
it made me look like a bad manager.
Because someone acts off in an interview, it doesn't mean that they committed the crime or that they're guilty in any way. And, I'm sure we'll talk about JonBenet Ramsey at some point, but a lot of people suspect JonBenet Ramsey's brother of killing her accidentally, and the parents covering it up. That's one of the big theories, and I'm sure people will disagree with me, but a lot of that theory hinges entirely on him having a poor interview, and that's really it. Of course, there are other things that, you know, point towards him if you're that way inclined. Maybe he did do it, I don't know.
But the biggest evidence is he's weird.
A lot of evidence comes down to him just having a strange interview, and that's it. It doesn't mean anything.
No, it's like I said, I have no suspicion whatsoever that she did anything to cause her death. But I don't know, it kind of feels like maybe there was an alarm that went off and she just went, oh, shut it up. It's that guy again smoking a cigarette. You know what I mean? Something like that, like, maybe. But obviously, this is all just, what do you call it? What's the word?
Speculation.
Yeah, it's all just speculation.
It's always been odd to me how many people have sort of been interested in this case and been very invested in it, been very personally invested in it, or personally affected by it in odd ways when they really shouldn't be. Because again, like I said earlier, you really should be focusing on mental health and how to get help with it. That's my takeaway from this.
A lot of people, including in the documentary itself, say, and I know a lot of people feel like this, and I have trouble understanding it, but they always say like, oh, I felt like I know her. I felt like she was my friend and she's now dead. And it's like, yeah, I imagine it'd be really kind of nice to feel that empathetic towards a stranger that you've never met.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, it's kind of like, would you have even spoke to her if she was alive? Why? Yeah, it's more like, oh, now we care about her, now she's dead. Now we care about her. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's thousands of people that they walk across every day. You don't know you've walked past someone, they might have gone off that night.
Yeah.
Did you speak to them? Why do you only care now they're dead? You get what I mean? It's like, I think it's nice that people care and they take things personally, because it's nice to think that people do care. But at the same time, like you said, there's better ways to put that energy.
There is. Also in this case, it comes across as massively disrespectful in some ways, like the people who have been going frame by frame on the video and speculating about all these stupid things and really don't have any conclusion or help in any way. And they are fun, I guess, to speculate on, but a lot of people take this stuff very seriously and they'll fight you tooth and nail over their opinion, even when it's based on the craziest things. I mean, there's even a video game based on this case, which is crazy to me. The premise of the game is it's based on Elisa Lam. She's in the game. I mean, it's not her, but it's an Asian girl that looks like her with a similar name. The main character and her go up in a lift and she gets taken away, and that's it. And we obviously see the parallels here. It feels very creepy and personal because the game was made as a passion project, and using this, and it's nothing to do with you. It's not like the creator of the game was related to her in any way.
No.
But he just felt very strongly about this story, and then he makes this strange romantic connection. It's very odd. It's very distasteful.
There is a band out there that has done a song called Elisa Lam, and also one called Chris Watts. The bands that make songs about these kind of cases and things, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. In some ways, like, people like it, people don't. People find these stories interesting, which is fair enough. And I think on one hand, it's kind of nice when people do look into cases a little bit deeper. Because imagine if something had happened to her and nobody knows about it, and now she's dead and the people that were involved never get brought to justice. And I like that people think, let's just double check, because we can't always trust the police to get things right. Let's just double check to make sure that this was this. But in this case, it went into frothing hysteria rather than just, you know, because sometimes there has been people that have gone missing and they've gone, oh, it was accidental, and it turns out someone did kill them. And if I got killed by someone, I want to make sure that they go to jail. So it is nice in some ways, but a lot of the time it's more like, I just want to be the one that cracked the case. I don't want the glory for it. I was trying to think, because with a lot of our videos, rather than just being for entertainment, I always like to think of something to learn from the video. But with this one, it's kind of very difficult to learn from it, because with things like Chris Watts, you can see the red flags. But with this, it's like, what can you really do? Because she's an adult, she can do what she wants. But at the same time, you can't basically say, you can't ever go out because you might die. It's like me not letting you go home because you might get in a car crash.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What am I supposed to do? And really, like we said, get better help. But it's, as you know, it's not that.
No, sometimes
simple,
these things come from nowhere. It can be a ticking time bomb, and there's no way of telling. And that's sad, but that is life. You have to live it.
I mean, her parents were doing a good job because they made sure she called them every day.
Yeah.
And then when she didn't call, they immediately raised the thing. So really, they've done all that they can.
They've done what they can.
What can you do?
It's not like they could stop her from going on this trip.
So I think really there's no one to blame here except maybe better professional help.
Yeah.
But I can't comment on that because I don't know exactly what happened. Maybe they did say, don't do this and that. You know, maybe the doctors did say, don't be alone. We don't know. We don't have any information on that.
Well, with all of these stories, any story that you see, we don't know from first-hand experience. We weren't there. So we can only go off what other people have said or what the police have said. And like everything, it gets completely jumbled once it gets out into the public perception. So this is 100% way of knowing.
This is one reason, and I wasn't even aware of the Netflix documentary when I started this. I did use it for a lot of this information because it's one of the most concise things I've seen that have put it together. And that's something I've always wanted because I've never really been able to find somebody who's done this case fully and fleshed it out fully on YouTube that I've been able to understand. And there's always a glaring question at the end, like, how did you get on the roof? Or how, you know, and that's why I also wanted to do this, to do a proper case that wasn't involved about some voodoo ghost crap. So if you enjoyed that video, we have plenty more. We got some on Chris Watts. We've got a very popular one on Nicole Kessinger at the moment, which gets lots of views.
Some on Chris Hansen, and he flagged them. Thanks.
Yeah, Chris ruined. We did do a video because it's been a while since we've done the last one because we've had one hell of a busy year. But we're looking back to getting filming now and getting stuff. I've moved house. I've got married, so I've had a lot of stuff going on. Well, thanks for taking your time to come here, Beeb. As always, it's out of your free time and you don't have much of it, especially now you got a cat. You know.
Yeah.
You've got to be a slave to the cat now. Probably a skeleton now. It's so long.
She'll be starving to death. She's not been fed for 2 hours.
But we've been Beyond the Devil. Hope you've enjoyed watching. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that other stupid stuff that you got to do on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next video.
Thanks for watching, and go and complain to Chris Hansen.
Thanks for watching Beyond the Devil.